Welcome to the Fractured Families podcast. I'm Charity, your dedicated parental alienation coach, here to guide and support families as they navigate the challenges of high conflict divorces and custody battles. On this podcast, we'll share insights, practical strategies, and hope for those on the journey toward healing and justice. Whether you're personally experiencing these challenges or just want to learn more about the complexities of parental alienation and custody disputes, you're in the right place. You are not alone. This is the Fractured Families podcast, where every voice matters and every story is heard. And if you find my conversation helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us reach more families who need it. Thank you for joining the Fractured Families podcast. This is Charity, your host. I have with me today Michael. He's an alienated father of 2 boys. He's going to share with us his 13-year-long battle of fighting for his boys. He's going to talk to us about what the court has done to him, what the relationship with his ex has done to his life, and the relationship with his children. Michael, thank you for joining. Go ahead and share
Thank you,
us
Sherry.
a little bit about yourself and your story, and we'll ask questions along the way.
Yeah, surely. Thank you. And also just thank you for having this podcast. I'm so glad I found it. And it's been eye-opening to see how many other people are in the same boat, and some of them worse boats than mine. So my name is Michael, and I've got two sons that I've been, their mom has done their best to alienate me from them. I separated 13 years ago and been divorced for about 12 years now, I think. It took a while. It's, the concept of time is off a little bit, but for the last 3 years, I've been fighting in court for increased parenting time. Originally, over 13 years ago, when I went to court, I was trying to get my divorce. I didn't have money. I was constantly in the negative, just trying to get away from my then wife. And I ended up moving all the way to Illinois. Throughout the divorce, I tried to play nice all the way up until, I say play nice, what I mean is just amicable. I'm very, I just try to make things work. But that usually meant me kind of having to deal with what was convenient for her. Uh, and just, and trying to, I had some serious struggles just trying to get away and get the divorce going, but also try to see my kids. I had to be really, really nice to her. I had to kiss her butt. Until the divorce was done, which took about 2.5 years. As soon as those 2.5 years were done, she tried to bribe me to not see my kids anymore, by not paying child support. And then that didn't work. And then she tried to, I don't know if I could say the what's the word? The self-elimination. She tried to coerce or do the coercive control on me on like, hey, well, then in that case, I'm just like, I don't want to be here anymore. She threatened that, and I didn't buy into that either. So, and she's still here. But I've had it's been difficult to afford to see my kids out of state. I just gave up. Let her have sole custody. She wasn't going to stop with anything less than sole custody. And unfortunately, she picked my older son. Then he was only 5 years old. I had 5 and a 3-year-old at the time. She picked him to try to convince the court that he had special needs. And she was bringing that up in court, and I'm like, I knew he did not have special needs. And I have, there's nothing against anyone with special needs, of course, but I knew that was just an angle that she was trying to work to try to convince the court that it was in my son's best interest for him to not go too far from mommy. So, I guess I'm going to get a little sarcastic with my face expressions here. But I know I saw what she was doing, and so I called up these therapists that she said that it was giving him the diagnosis. They told me that they did not diagnose him with that. And then I'm like, okay, well, can I call you as a witness? And they're like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. So when I saw that she will just shop around for whoever can say it, or at least she'll lie about it, I didn't have the money to fight anymore. At that point, I didn't want to fight. I didn't want what that would do to my kids too. That's not what I was looking for. So I accepted to just lose, just have her have sole custody. And then came the out-of-state visitation. She didn't want to agree to that, and so we agreed to. This is my biggest regret. Was that I agreed. It came from a good place. I agreed to mediation. Now I know that who I was dealing with, somebody who was highly narcissistic, and that mediation is just like they just used that to just continue to gain more ground. I went in there and back then they didn't do Skype or video calls, and I was living 700 miles away in Virginia, and then my kids are in Illinois. So I couldn't afford to just go out there for like one session over, I wouldn't know how many rounds of mediation it would be. And for every time it would cost for me to go to, one round of mediation, that's a trip to see my kids. So I just tried to be uh, smart about it, strategic on how I spent my money at that, knowing I didn't have much back then. And I always thought that when I had more money, I would try harder to see them more often. So I've been seeing them for, on average, outside of COVID, I'm not going to count those years because that messes up my average, about 3 to 4 times a year. Um, yeah, that's about how often I could afford the airfare, the rental car, the hotel, you know, um, and I had to give them a special diet because their mom was like, no, this color, no, this food color, no gluten, no this, no that. And of course, if I did any of those things, my kids would let their mom know. And then it was just like, oh, you don't care about your children's nutritional needs. So it's like I had to be, that's the dance that I did for the last 13 years. Um, Now, I still stayed in touch with them. I would be able to call them and do FaceTime, especially when I was on her good side. But, if she wanted more child support, she would say, hey, I want more. And of course, in me, I know where that's going. I'm like, if I say no, then she's going to stop me from talking to my kids, which she did in the past several times. And if I say yes, now it shows her that she can just yank me around whenever she wants, and she knows that I love my kids, so she knows. So that puts me in a tough spot. So there's been times where I've acquiesced to that and gave her more money because I enjoy the interaction with my children, and so yeah. So that's how I've been able to keep a relationship going on with my kids all this time. What she didn't tell me until what I found out later on was that uh, she was questioning my kids as soon as they would get home. She was trying to see kind of what I was doing with them, and if she approved or not. And then if she didn't approve of whatever it was, just her own opinion about parenting style. And it was just a different parenting style. I'd hear from it, you know, and anyway, so there was that. Then there was also just my kids hearing that, like, oh, your father lets you do this. Huh. That's not what I would do, And so my kids had to listen to these little things that they told me about it, over the years. And of course, I kept silent about it. I didn't know what narcissistic personality disorder was, but I knew my ex-wife very well. So when I came to understand the terminology later, everything just clicked. And I can get to that in a second, of course. But I just wanted to say I was able to keep in touch with my kids here and there. But it was really bad in the beginning. It was like a 15-minute phone call on Sundays because even though I had the rights to call them every day and we had the means for video communication, and she was like, no. So during the most basic formative years, I was very uninvolved, like not by my own desire, of course, but
When
I
she
never
would
stopped trying.
when she would like dangle this, I want that, like child support, was that done through the court system or was that just
Never.
used?
It was just emails. And I'm so
Okay.
glad it was email because we got very early in through the divorce and separation. I'm like, it's all got to be emails from now on.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of like I have 13 years of email history, and I kept everything, filed everything, keyworded everything. I hate it. Honestly, I hate having to like document everything, but it did pay off. So anybody who's going through this struggle, it's the name of the game. You have to document like crazy and just or keep it organized. File it under parental alienation, file it under threats, I've got, yeah, it gives me peace of mind because when you go to court eventually, which I'm going through right now, it makes it very difficult for when the opposing counsel comes in and says, well, and starts making accusations, you can come back with like, no, and not only that, but I have evidence like, to say the contrary, and of course, then they
At
ask
what
for it, and then
point?
you give it to them.
At what point did you, so you separated, you moved out of state. At what point did you realize it was parental alienation and how did you come to that realization?
From the beginning because she wouldn't let me talk to my kids that much. It, Especially when the divorce was going through the final, like I had to wait over 2 years because the Illinois rules. She contested the divorce. She didn't want to get divorced, and so I had to wait 2 years to file it again. And so in those 2 years, it's like it really depended on her mood. And I'm gonna come out and admit it right here on camera that I did kind of play the game of like letting her think that there may be hope, that I might be interested. Um, I did not like that I did that, but my reasoning was that as long as she felt like there was a chance that this really wasn't over, I would have access to my kids. And you know, I'm not proud of that, but I do feel, well, she proved to me, once the divorce was final, she really like, she didn't care what the court decree said, and
So
I would send emails and remind her. "Hmm?
once she realized it was over, she stuck it to you. She made you
Oh
pay.
yeah, oh yeah," and that's when she tried to get me to like not see the kids anymore, and threatened to self harm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I personally, when I felt like it was she knew that she was in the wrong, because I explained everything. When I went through the divorce, I explained like this is why this relationship didn't work. You're very controlling. Everything I do or say is wrong. I never, you're always, withholding of intimacy just to like, and I just felt like it was just nonstop control. I like didn't have an identity. I tried to explain this to her, and she, of course, did the fear, obligation, guilt, the fog maneuver of like, oh well, you're a Christian, and it's like you want to break your apart your family. That's like the worst thing you could ever do. It's like I dealt with all this, and not to mention with it before the divorce was final, she sent me many videos of my children, not begging, not pleading, but asking, like, Daddy, will you please stay married to Mommy? Will you please stay married? And don't tell lies, and be a good daddy, and do what God says. And it's like, so I have these videos, and like, they're so difficult for me to watch. I only watch them whenever I have to like prepare them for evidence. It's only a handful of times, but like when back then it was so hard, and equally now that I understand what they really were going through, I knew what that would do to them because I knew I had no intention of staying with their mother, and so I'm thinking in their heads like, Dad doesn't care about us. We can't even convince Dad. He doesn't love Mom anymore. Now he doesn't. So I did my best to reassure them all throughout childhood that I love them dearly. There are ways that I've been able to connect with my kids over the years, being so distant, and that is, I found what they were interested in. Like what I would like is when I was growing up, like I really wish my parents were more interested in what I liked, like my Lego sets and all the cool things I built, and uh, they give me a little attention. Oh wow, that's really nice, Michael. That's pretty cool. Okay, and that's it. And of course, as a kid, I'm like, yeah, I can see through that shit too. I'm like, uh,
Yeah.
at least you tried. At least you're pretending or whatever. But I was expecting, oh wow, and show me how this works. What? You did this? Like it wasn't like that. So before my kids were even born, I knew that that's the kind of father I wanted to give them. So it was genuinely cared about what their interests were, and so that's what I did over the phone,
Mhm.
and all these years. They like Pokemon. I got into Pokemon. I figured out all the Pokemon evolutions, the Pikachu's, the but the Squirtles and the Charizards, and like I figured out, because that was how I could relate to them. I went to their level. Video games is kind of where we got to connect. They liked Minecraft. I learned how to Minecraft. I like Minecraft anyway. Um, but if they liked a TV show, it's like like that's I would watch these shows without them because we couldn't watch them together. Whenever we would talk, I would be able to connect, and I try to like share stories of like try to do some parenting through like, oh, I saw this, that reminds me of like, when you have to share, or I would that's how I did my parenting all these years. Um and it did pay off because three years ago, my oldest son, who was experiencing a lot of I'll say mental health related issues, according to his mother. He was getting tested, and I just, he was fine with me when we would hang out, on our, but I could definitely tell that he was like, especially in his 14, 15 years old, he was becoming more distant, not distant from me, but like even from his own brother. Uh, and I was worried, and I didn't. but at the same time, I had no power. If I were to show any concern toward my son, his mom would have taken it badly. And I knew that before I knew what narcissism, she would have been like, oh, and now you care? Or, oh, and what makes you think that you know what's best after you left? It's like, because I can say all this stuff because I heard it so many times.
Right.
It's like, I can, I even would tell her this stuff, like back before the divorce actually happened, before separation, I would just say, well, if I say this, then you'll say this, and then I'll say this, and you'll say that, and she would just get so pissed off at me whenever I would do that. So it's like, so because I say, so there's really no point in me saying anything because no matter what I say, this isn't valid, nor this or that, and that. It's like, so I'll just shut up right now, right? Is that what you want? So this is how I was.
Right.
Um, I, I wasn't groomed to be with narcissists. I just believed that people were good heart if they showed me who they were.
Mhm.
I really believed it. So so when I started seeing the marriage not going so well, which was in the first 6 months, I already brought up the topic of divorce. Back then, I'm like, if we don't work on this, it's like there isn't going to be a future for us. So I said that even back then. Then their kids started coming out unexpectedly, of course.
Well, it was unexpected for you. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I mean, of course, I'm sure every relationship, the goal is likely to have children, but
Yeah, yeah, that was totally, and I mentioned that too. Like
yeah,
there's no way I want to have kids until we get this figured out. And it's like, if we can't get this figured out, I don't even want to stay married. I'm sure it was no
exactly.
surprise to her when I finally left. Well,
Yeah.
maybe it was a surprise. There's a story in how I left. Um, the opportunity came and I seized it to run. I took what I had with me and I left without notice. Um, I didn't like how that had an effect on my kids. But I had to go. I did not. The lease was up, and pretty much we were gonna go back to her parents. Her parents were gonna host us for a while, and that household was even worse. And I could not go there. So that was my like, it's either that or I bounce until I left, until I never came back and filed for divorce within a couple of weeks. But
She didn't
yeah,
take that.
so no, no, no. And then of course, because I knew that she was going to be, because how addictive she was just in the relationship, I knew that she was probably going to do financial abuse. I know that now it's financial abuse, so I closed all of our joint credit cards. I closed everything, even the cell phone stuff. I turned out because the cell phones could be used to purchase music. I think back then it was weird, but but I didn't. I even believed that she was vindictive enough to just run up. Well, I'll just buy a whole bunch of ringtones and just
Hmm.
I just completely cut everything off and I left and she was livid, of course. Um, but that's how I did it. Um, there's no way I was going to tell her I'm leaving right now because I know it would have gotten violent. She had already gotten like violent with me 3 times. After the third time, that's pretty much when I was like, I'm done with this. Um, but 3 years ago, my oldest son, the one I was mentioning, she was targeting for, um, at the beginning of the divorce for having like special needs. She was taking him to get tested left and right, and we had our call, but everyone was gone at the house. It was just him at the time, so he felt a little bit more free to talk to me, and that's when he opened up and talked to me about what he was feeling inside. He didn't really know why, or he just said, "Look, Dad, like I don't know. I don't care if I live or die anymore. I don't know." It's like, and when I heard this, it was heartbreaking. But the more he talked, because I let him speak, and I was just so thankful that I had this time to talk so openly. And also, I was like, wow, he was really articulating kind of what was going on the inside, even though we couldn't put the pieces together at the time. All I knew is everything he was saying was how I felt when I was married before I left. I also was didn't care if I lived or died. I wanted to stay alive for my kids, but it's like I knew I couldn't be the father I wanted to be for them because my parenting style is more of like trying to build independence in the child, and hers is more of like let's coddle and make sure that they don't leave. And I'm like, that's not.
Total control. They want total
Yeah, well, I didn't
control.
see it like that back then, and she also
Yeah.
wanted to homeschool them, and I was like, I don't think that's a good idea because they won't have a lot of. So I want their social skills. And I'm not knocking anyone who homeschools, but then I saw what she used it for. Later on, it was complete control, isolating my kids. So that's what they've been going through all these years. When he opened up to me, I I went online and I was like, I just looked up controlling vindictive people. And I don't know how I just came across a video from Dr. Romani, and that just like, what the F? What the F? And that's when I saw everything. I was like, oh my gosh, this was exactly narcissistic personality disorder or narcissistic pathologies. That's who I was dealing with all the time. I knew that. I knew it all. I just didn't know there were words for all this stuff. And the gray rocking, which is what I've been doing all these years. The no contact, which I had to do in the very beginning with her, just to kind of like keep her away from me. The whole like violating the boundaries, like she went through my email. She hacked my email and went through my emails like right before the divorce was final. But like all the gaslighting. I didn't even realize I've been. I I actually have a journal entry where I was writing. I was like, oh, but you know me, Michael, with his bad memory. It's like, it's a good thing I have my wife to remember all this stuff for me. I completely trusted her, and I could see like my memory's not bad. When people don't question me, it's like I don't know. I'm not gonna say I'm gaslight proof, but I will pick up on some stuff. If someone says, "Oh no, that's not what you said. You said this," so I was like, I know what I said. Oh, maybe it was more like this. Like, no, maybe it's what I said the first time. Yeah. Like I am like I'm that guy now. Um, now that I know, you know,
What it
that this stuff
is.
exists. Yeah. So, and so that set me out on like, I need to try to get my kids in the most amicable way possible. So I tried to ask, I even asked them, like, do you guys have a desire to spend more time with me? Let's just get that, like, in Virginia. And they're like, well, yeah, we do, but dad, you really want to talk to mom first. So I was like, I know why they said that, of course. So I knew I was most likely going to have to go the legal route, but I asked her anyway. And I asked her right in front of them. I know the court's not going to like that, but that's because I asked her so many times already via email. And so, like, to spend time with them outside of in the state of Virginia. And sometimes, and she would sometimes say no or maybe. It was maybe for like 10 years. So, so I did it right in front of them, and she called me manipulative, which of course I can understand why she would say that. But and that's when I was like, I gotta go now. I gotta go to court. So went to called Child Protective Services because what my sons told me reflected emotional abuse. And the Illinois Child Protective Services indicates what that is, what constitutes as emotional abuse. And I'm like, okay, well, and then I called it in. I said, well, this, I gave bullets, and long story short, unfounded. They went over there and they questioned my kids, like in their mom's presence too. And my kids, of course, didn't know I was going to do that. I didn't want to give my kids a head. They would have been like, Dad, no, because they didn't. It didn't work out. And of course, once I did that, the war was on. Luckily, I was prepared for what was to come because I've already read all the horror stories and I already knew what she was capable from before for like just lying about my own children's mental health status. So this last 3 years, I would say, with the exception of this last year, she's been on walking on eggshells with every because of I got all the people that's involved. But the first 2 years, she put my son through the ringer, and I even told him I was like, look, this is what's most likely going to come. I even let her know about the whole scapegoat. He looked up the videos, his mind was blown too, and so I said, look, it's going to get really bad before it gets better. You're going to get the brunt of it. Your brother's going to see it, which is kind of a good thing that your brother sees it. Um, but and next, he was pushed she got physical with him too, and to the point where he had to run away because he knew that if that he didn't have a choice, he was afraid that if he would hit her, that she would, completely destroy his future he wanted to join the military. And he's like, if I do that, it's jail. And she would totally do that to make an example out of it. And so that's what she put him through. And then she ended up sending him to mental institutions, one right after the other after that, trying to create the narrative that, he's psychotic or schizophrenic. And because she was trying to tell them that he does things that normal kids, oh, she's a therapist, by the way. So I put that out there. So it's like, she knows all the words. She's talking to these therapists. She's got, the buddy with them, and they're actually everything he's telling them about her, she's denying it. She's denying, like, that never happened. That never happened. And so that's been his life. Luckily, I have one tough kid, but they're both tough now. Um, But fast forward, and I will say everything that's transpired, I already knew it before I went to court that there would be a guardian ad litem involved at some point, and that was my goal to get that going as soon as possible. After her blocking enough of my normal scheduled visits, they did get the guardian involved because I kept going to the court for it. So it's been $80,000 so far in 3 years of me and her stopping my visitation like about 4 or 5 times, or interrupting my visitation too. Just trying to like keep me from spending time with my kids, even in the state of Illinois, which I already have rights to,
Right. Yeah.
because I was the enemy at that point. But um, and I also knew that we were probably going to have a psychological evaluation for parental fitness. We have two of those now. Um, but yeah, fast forward, I will say that both my sons they know this. They know NPD inside and out. We all do. As a matter of fact, my older son, who was being put through the ringer, he was like, he knew how it works. He's very smart. And he was actually like he was doing the triangulation thing on his own too. And he was even like doing it back. And he would brag about it to me too. Like, Dad, look, I did this. Like, I got them involved. And then, of course, they all took mom's side, of course. But it's like,
Okay.
he could see how easy it was to just do everything his mom did. And so I wasn't worried about him becoming a narcissist or anything. But I was concerned that a change in behavior like that would make it look to the professionals that he was being rebellious or something like that. So I said, look, like, I know you just found this power, but like, it's good. It works. You know how they operate. You know how to like pull the strings, but you don't need to do that anymore. So, um, they're gonna be just fine. So whether I get custody or not, and I'll find out next month, m- my sons they'll be fine. So I've already accepted that I did my part. The fight alone is what made us all stronger. And I wish it didn't cost this much. I wish it didn't take this long, but we all came out um, very resilient. Yeah, and they are now prepared for what comes after, and they're not afraid to leave their mom's house anymore.
So when this started and Child Protective Services went in there and interviewed them in front of her, they hadn't quite realized what was happening. And so of course they're still afraid of her. So they're doing everything she wants them to do because they don't know any better. They're still
They don't.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah, my kids don't know better.
So
And the appearance of the house is very neat, very clean, very orderly, very structured. My children are very polite because that's the way that's the mask of the family is that we're up here kind of thing.
mhm,
We're better than that, which is great. It kind of worked out for my kids
yeah,
in the long term, I guess.
yeah. So you're still scheduled to see them 4 times a year, and you haven't seen them recently because of her strategies and tactics.
Well, I was able to get out of state visitation last year,
Okay.
or about a year and a half ago, almost. So I got like summers, not whole summers, but like a week or two here and there. I got like a week in around Christmas, so I had them for New Year's, Christmas through New Year's, Thanksgiving. I had them so uh, in the state of Virginia. And that's been nice because I've been married for 10 years and I know what a happy, functional marriage looks like that's healthy. So and I wanted them to see that too, and so that's been great.
Right. Did
Mhm.
she ever remarry?
No, she still lives with her parents. Ever since that time where it was moving back and to her mom's house, her parents, I was like, nope. And she's still there with her. We're both 45 years old, she's there with a younger sister who also never left. Who's 40. So like no one will ever leave that house ever. And like and I'm not knocking people who live with the parents for whatever reasons, if they're supporting the parents or maybe there's a tough time, but this is because there's like under codependence is through the roof, and ability to keep a job is like I think that's why she went the therapist route because
It's generational
be their own
trauma.
boss.
I mean,
Yeah.
you have this trauma that's instilled from families into your comment earlier. Like, there's that fear that when the kids are around her 24/7, minus a little bit of time that you were, graced as a parent, they're always seeing that type of manipulation and they become part of that too. Right? And
Mhm.
so, and that's likely the household that she was raised in.
Oh
And
yeah.
in some cases, they come out worse than their parents because again, they become masters of it because they see it, they implement it, they see what it gets them, and then they instill it into others, especially their
I,
children.
I will say that when I left her, there was this email that I'll never forget where she actually came out and she didn't get into details, but everything she said, it was almost like a narcissist becoming self-aware. Because I was like, but for me, it's like it's too late. Right? It wasn't. It also wasn't. It didn't. The goal wasn't to get me back, and she made that clear at that point. Whether or not it's true or not, I don't know. But when I reading that email is very haunting to me because it's like she did talk about like a voice in their head about like that there's something that she didn't understand love, that she felt like control was like if you did stuff for me, that meant you love me. Now, whether or not that's what she really feels, or at least, but that's what she communicated. So very eye opening to read those emails, and I did reread them all, especially when I was getting ready for the court and getting all my documentation ready. I was going back to read these emails through the lens of you know, awareness of narcissistic abuse. And it was like, she knows. And she still chose to be that way with with her own children. And I didn't even realize back then that she would be the same way with me to my kids. I thought my kids were going to be like princes in that household, and I would be like, the background guy, but because of how she uplifted them like crazy, she really took her role as a mother very seriously, especially in the very beginning. So I definitely applaud that part. I so because it's been tough. I haven't talked about my feelings behind all this. It was just devastating, especially like I had to deal with the order of protection. I had to deal with being accused of abuse. I've had to deal with not being able to see my kids without supervision because of accusations. And even when my son was going through the worst fit through the institution, I was not even allowed to take him to see him because they said that he was so triggered that and I knew it was a lie, but she was able to convince the judge to restrict my visitation to only one child. So here he is, I can barely afford to come out. I'm coming out to see them, and then it's like I know what he's going through. I just want to be there for him,
Yeah.
and now I have to be like my normal self for my other child, who's it was so, and he was the golden child too, by the way. But now he's not so golden in his mom's eyes anymore. But he's really come so far. So it's been a beautiful experience, and I wanted to write about it. And so I did write a book. It's called The Sword That Divides. And I wanted to just tell the story. It is a little part memoir about kind of as it relates to manipulation. And it talks about my story,
Mhm.
but I put it under the disguise of it's a game. And so on the back, I talk about I offer a new perspective on a tale as old as time, a hero's journey for the ages. I introduce a reality-based game for all to play and enjoy until the end of time. So the victors will go unimaginable spoils, but only for the bold and true. Either way, you will feel the sword that divides, whether you choose to wield it or it rends you. And so I turned it into a game, trying to understand what this, how manipulation works. And so I use this big ass book. I'm so sorry. I hate it that it says, but I tell the story in such a way because as if the reader was me 3 years ago. Like, how can I tell a story where I slowly impart the dynamics behind like control and manipulation and bringing it at its most innocent levels of like child's play? And so I bring that up and like the stuff I used to do it like as a child, and then bringing that through my adult life, all through adolescent, through bullying, and I talk about that um, all the way through the actual marriage and how and then the divorce, and then I go into my awareness, and then I link everything to I teach everything the podcasts are about. Like we learn parental alienation, isolation, um, the gang stalking, flying monkeys. I put a whole chapter in my book that just where I learned the terminology and I just share what it's like, and I have fun with it. That's one thing I want to say is I have a lot of fun with just like I make fun of narcissists in here, and I'm just like, can you believe it? Like they're so pathetic. Do they have to do this? It's like, and so, but that was my healing. That actually helped me heal. And so when I went to write my story, I knew that I couldn't just publish it with anyone because I was talking about a certain type of abuse in here, and maybe publishing companies don't want to like, oh, that's touchy, oh, that you can get sued or something's going to come back, defamation. Um, and so that's why I went through a publisher called Powerful Books, and they focus on victims of abuse, um, sexual abuse, child sexual abuse. It's all these folks write their books, and I've got several of them with me. I just for the um, but sorry. Anyway, um, that's how people are healing is by talking about what happened, and that's the only way you can really heal. And if you write a book about it, it really pushes you in ways and healing like it just like leaps and bounds. Anyway, there's a community involved. There's a whole they really did a good job. But that's how I told my story.
That's amazing. And let me ask you, do your boys know about the book?
They do, and I wouldn't have wrote it without their permission. I did ask them. I said, "Look, I want to tell the world about this stuff." And it's like, "Are you okay with, you know, obviously it affects their lives too, when I start writing." And they're like, "No, this needs to be told." So
That's
I got their
incredible.
support.
It's just incredible that through all her narcissistic behaviors that they still aligned with you. That is such a rarity. Like you've seen
It
my
is.
videos, you've heard my stories, you
Mhm.
heard my story, and you hear how bad she was and the fact that she hasn't even moved on and she's still living at home. And not only do they deal with it from her, but that household.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
still persevered.
they did.
That relationship that you had with them has got to be so incredible that they manage to still want that relationship with you because that doesn't happen, Michael.
I know, and I will say that she because their mom stressed a relationship with God since the beginning, although I think she meant for herself to be a conduit. But either way, it worked out. And of course, me leaving and lying, pretty much lying to the mom, saying, not telling her I was going to leave.
Yeah.
That I think that painted like a righteous light on her. And either way, I think it's our relationship with God that got us through it in the end. That you'll hear that from all the three of us, and they're going to tell their story someday too when they feel like it. Um, and that's really going to be devastating. I really hope that their mother wakes up, and that's also why I wrote the book. Like, I wrote it because it's like I do have a certain level of compassion in me for narcissists, but it's like I do believe that the only way that they can come to grips with reality, the ones who are self-aware, who've done the work, have done so after hitting the rock bottom and losing everybody. And so that's what's on the horizon for her, whether the court takes my kids from her or whether my kids leave on their own because, and that's already, we're within about a year and a half of that happening anyway. So there's still time into salvage a relationship with her own children, if she has to just face the music. And she read my book,
She
and
did?
she's just using it against me. And she tried to use it
Oh,
against me in court, and it doesn't
of
work
course, yeah.
because I don't know why it's not working. Um, because the professionals say I'm allowed to have my thoughts and opinions,
Well, that was my thought.
even
Is
though
like
it,
you're
even though
allowed
it
to have,
doesn't look good on me because I talk about the situation.
but you're allowed to have your emotions. Those are your feelings. You can't use that against somebody. I mean, it's how you feel.
Yeah.
So one last question I have about the boys. I mean, they're obviously enduring abuse in that household and they're sustaining and are they getting, I mean, I know that your oldest is probably traumatized by mental health because of what she's done to him, because of what she's put him through. How does he cope with that?
So they don't trust therapists that much. Because either they don't see it or the issues that they're facing, or they do see it and they're too afraid to say something. But as long as their mother is in the picture, it's like the concern is that they're going to breach the trust right there, because they experienced it. They went through at least seven therapists each at this point in the last few years. Um, well, I average between the two. She just would shop around, but yeah, so that's the effect it's had. Uh, uh, that trying to get my kids to be on medication, trying to like, it's just to make them more subduable. It's like really, so my kids have their own opinions about medication and the legal system because they've been watching all along. I shared with them transcripts and even that was mentioned in court. The fact that I'm very transparent with my kids about this entire process, all the documentation that was submitted against me, saying that I'm abusive toward them, I let them see that too, because I know that makes me look like a parental alienator myself. But I believe in full transparency, and if their mom chooses to lie, then they're gonna see it. And I don't believe in waiting until it's all over or they turn 18 to show them. So I'm not that guy anymore.
And it worked in your favor because you still had that relationship. It usually doesn't work. It usually backfires. And it is sign of parental alienation is to show the kids the transcripts and to keep them included in everything. So it definitely is. I mean, I can see how she would say, well, you're the one alienating, except you don't see your kids,
Yeah,
right? So,
exactly.
yeah.
I will say in the last year, because she's been walking on eggshells, because she's been, she's had to speak in front of in court on in several occasions, and it's yeah, I think her own lawyer is probably telling her, like, you need to let the kids out of the house. You need to let them have jobs. So now they have jobs. Now they have a license, even though one's 18 and one's 16. But one of them's got a girlfriend. That's weird for me, right? As a parent, like, it's like it's a new world. But yeah, I will say it's because of, and my kids even know that it's because of the fight that they have things as calm as they are right now in the house. I don't say they're super calm, but there's more freedom, that they have
Yeah.
more autonomy.
More balance for their lives.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you for joining.
Thank
And
you,
I
Sarah.
will make sure that we put your links to your book on our podcast so that you can make sure that when people come to my show, that they have access to how to get your book, because I'm sure that many of our listeners will love to read that and see a different perspective on how
Yeah,
you came out, not unscathed by any means,
for
but you
real.
came out with still, yeah, you have a relationship where many parents would during this for 13 years would be thrilled to have the type of relationship. Although it's been painful for all of
Yeah,
you, it definitely is something we don't normally hear.
that's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, and make sure we'll get that on my podcast. And any final thoughts for our listeners?
Just thank you so much. I'm so glad you're doing this. I'm loving the podcast, and I think more awareness is just gonna help more people heal in the long run. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Fractured Families podcast. I hope our conversation has provided you with support, understanding, and actionable insights to help you navigate your own family challenges. Remember, healing is a journey, and reaching out for help is a sign of strength. You're not alone. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more families in need. You can contact me on social media at Parental Alienation is Real, and visit our website for additional resources and ways to get involved. Stay strong, stay connected, and keep fighting for the family bonds that matter most. Until next time, take care and stay resilient.